Hey friends, hope you're having a great day. So, in recent weeks, I've had a similar conversation around how habits are formed with multiple clients that are in my practice right now. And I try to pay attention when those recurring themes arise, and I think it's often a good idea to share that out with you, my social network, so you can hopefully yield some benefit too, because obviously it's up in my practice right now. This particular conversation that I've been having is on the kind of neuroscientific nuts and bolts of habit formation, and how it comes about and how habits are therefore then later triggered, right? And at a deeper level, why this is important information that we study in my practice is because habits, especially the very old ones that we've developed, can form this more complex layer or web of layers within us that become known in psychology as character, right? And character is this idea of really who you are, right? How do you relate to yourself? How do you relate to other people and the world? How do you act? What kind of energy does your system have? How do you perceive things? What challenges existentially do you typically show up with? And to a certain extent, and for some people, even the formation of one's body structure gets influenced by character. All right, so I've been talking with these folks in recent weeks about, okay, well, how does this all happen? Like, literally, what's the nuts and bolts? So I thought I'd share that with you here today, and hopefully you get some benefit. Hopefully it's interesting. And of course, feel free to comment or DM me if you have any of your own interesting observations or questions about it, right? So for reference material, if you're interested, what I'm referencing is this book, which is the, I believe, 2015 published textbook for Hakomi, which, as it's called here, Hakomi Mindfulness-Centered Somatic Psychotherapy. It's an excellent book, really well written by some wonderful people. And if you're at all interested in getting into the real deep nerdery of mindfulness-based somatic psychology, this is a great resource. So, as I'm talking through this idea of habit formation, you might see me peeking. That means I don't have it memorized, so bear with me. And I'll try to go rather quick, so bring questions in the comments if you need. As mammals, we emotionally resonate with people and situations. That's called limbic resonance, right? The limbic system in our brains is responsible for how we share and connect with feeling states with ourselves and other people, right? And those feeling states can be positive, harmonious, empathetic, as well as negative, stressful, around fear, anxiety, or anger, right? So when we are developing kind of this process of developing habits and bigger sets of habits, character, we receive stimulus from the world, right? Like, our nervous systems are kind of these filtering systems for stimulus. And deep within our systems, we have some sort of limbic response to that stimulus, right? We have a feeling state that arises in response to challenges we face, right? And if we're talking about early childhood, there's the developmental challenges of, learning to be an individual, getting our needs met, feeling safe, feeling free, experimenting with boundaries, things like that, right? So when we have these challenges, as we meet them, we either succeed or fail, and we have some emotional feeling state arise as a result of that, right? The emotions arise, and then a somaticized or body experience arises too, right? Like if we feel happy, it's like, oh, wow, that feels great. Or if we feel frustrated, it might be like, right? So there's the connection of the emotion and physicality of those states, right? Deep layers of our psyche, right? Now, those challenges or stressors repeat through our lives, and repetition of those states or those challenges, and therefore repetition of those states that respond to those challenges, create neural networks in our brain that form around those feeling states, right? So we, in effect, create an emotional framework for how we perceive this particular challenge, right? And that framework also includes the somatic responses, whether that's an opening, a closing, a tightening, getting hot, flustered, whatever it might be, right? It all begins to form a early habituated pattern in the neural networks, right? Now, eventually, those stimulate our neocortex, right, the higher thinking part of our brain, to begin to create a rational context, a meaning making for what this all means, this experience, and how I'm responding to it, right? When we start to develop higher levels of thinking, we start to process and make meaning of our experiences, right? So that then begins to stimulate the creation of beliefs, perceptions, and behaviors around all of these stimulus response experiences that we're having, right? And those higher levels of thinking and meaning making then create a network with the lower levels of sensory, emotional, motor experience, right? It becomes a more complex network, right? So as that grows in complexity, that then becomes what's known as a character pattern, right? This starts to become more of, who are you? How do you show up to these things, right? What's, in my case, what's Mike's way of dealing with this particular stressor, and what does he think and make meaning around when that happens, right? Later, we have experiences which are known in neuroscience as attractors, right? Now, attractors are this really interesting thing, and because they're so interesting, I'm going to actually read this quote. Attractors are ingrained prototypical neural links, so that's like a prototype experience in the nervous system, that influence perception according to past experience and lead us at times to see what we expect to see rather than what is actually present. Right, I'm going to read that last part again. They lead us at times to see what we expect to see rather than what is actually present. Right? Those attractors then evoke this character network in our system. Right? So some life situation comes up, and there might be an element of that that is singular, right? Like a small piece, like the way someone looks at you, or the tone of their voice, or a movement they made, something along those lines that's simple, that has a part or takes part within that more complex neural network, right? And that is like a reference point within this neural network. So when you experience this more singular, simple attractor, it can actually activate this entire neural network pattern, right? So that's this notion of you might see what you expect to see versus what is fully actually there, right? It's a habit. This very simple thing creates a cascade of a lot of different impact in your system, right? Even if that newer attractor experience isn't like an existential threat to your being, right? It just has like a familiarity to it. Now, what's interesting about these patterns is the more and more they happen in your system, the more sensitized your system becomes. And what that means is it takes a lower and lower threshold of stimulus to evoke the full response, right? So you don't get numb to the stimulus over time. In this case, you actually get more attuned to it, and it happens easier in your system, right? And that then is the production of habituated character, right? And of course, we can have numerous ones of these. There's not just one, right? There can be a whole complex of different character structures in the neural networks that respond to different parts of your life and world, right? Now, I should have said this at the beginning because I was hoping to catch most of you. If you've made it till now, here's maybe a little bit more of the gravy, which is these are important things to understand about yourself, because often our challenges that we have now, and that could be a physical challenge, right, with pain. It could be a movement-related challenge, posture, which of course can relate to physicality and pain. It could be an emotional challenge, a relational challenge with a partner or a coworker or friend or family member, or even bigger existential challenges like a life path type issue. Often these are rooted in these habits, right? And if you can get to know the habit patterns that are unfolding and the stimulus that triggers them, then you have kind of the keys to the kingdom to transforming yourself from the inside out. And that's why I think this stuff is really important, and why it's always interesting to me to talk about it, share it, and work with my clients around it. So, gotten pretty long here. I'm going to let it go for now. If you have any questions or curiosities about this process, do feel free to comment or DM me. And I hope you found this interesting. Look forward to connecting again soon. Cheers.